Hello, namaste. Thank you so much for being here. So happy to see you all, and really grateful as well as sharing about this journey that I've recently been on. Is is a journey in itself, is a process. And I don't know what I will say yet, but we're all going to find out together. I don't have any notes or anything like that. But I thought we could start with a moment of presence. So wherever you are, find a comfortable seat. You can close your eyes or keep a soft gaze towards the ground. And we'll take a deep breath in together. And open the mouth to release the breath. Arriving in this moment. Allow everything that is present for you now to be welcome. Physical sensations, emotions, thoughts. Let everything be as it is. Allow your breath to slow down. As your body relaxes. And bring your awareness in the middle of the chest, a little to the right, to the spiritual heart, Hridaya. And rest here for a few breaths. Knowing that there is nothing you need to do in this moment, that being is enough. Take a slow breath in through your nose. And release the breath softly. And when you're ready, you can gently blink your eyes open. Welcome to those that just joined us. Namaste. So I want to start this gathering by saying that I had a moment of hesitation before organizing this. I thought it feels a little self-indulgent to say, come and listen to me speak. But then I reflected on the fact that my intention with this gathering is to share from the heart the gifts and the challenges of silence and solitude, uh, not for my personal benefit, but really for the benefit of us all. Because we can also create space for silence and solitude in our daily lives, which is really what I aspire to continue to create for myself and to inspire others to do the same. So, you don't need to sit there thinking, well, I could never do 59 days. Believe me, I didn't think I could either. But rather of how we can implement the teachings into our daily lives. So I commit to share authentically without embellishing or exaggerating as best as I can. And I trust that anything that needs to be shared will be shared. But at the end, if you have any questions or any comments, please know that you can also speak. So I want to start actually 10 years ago. When I first heard of silent retreats, one of my housemates was vegan. I thought she was really extreme. I'm currently vegan. But at the time I was like, whoa, you know, she doesn't drink alcohol. I don't either. But at the time it all seemed very intense. And she spoke of Vipassana. And I asked what that was. And she said, well, it's a silent retreat. And I remember vividly because I said I could never do that. Well, that was 10 years ago, maybe a bit longer actually. And about 7 years ago, I did my first 3-day silent retreat. And I was really nervous going into it. Jennifer, you know, it was with Antoinetta, so Sahajananda, my beloved teacher's wife. And so those 3 days were really difficult. And during those 3 days, I thought, I'm never doing this again. Well, 2 years later, I signed up for the 10-day silent retreat. The 10-day silent retreat was quite challenging. I felt a lot of discomfort in my body, in meditations. I thought it felt really long, but still I came out of it feeling lighter, more aware, more conscious, and I could see how these intense spiritual experiences, because of course it's not enough to just have, you know, those of you who have done a yoga teacher training or a retreat know that these intense spiritual journeys are kind of like a quantum leap where you feel this awakening happening. It's like, oh, I see everything differently. And then you go home and it feels almost like, what did I see differently? So it's really important to cultivate the practice at home on a daily basis. But I could see how I would come out of those experiences and you know, cry in my mother's arms and be like, I just love you so much. And she was like, okay, what happened? And I couldn't quite put it in words, but it felt like my heart had been just burst open. But with that, of course, with the heart opening up, often there is not just love and joy, right? There's often grief and pain. So that was after the 10-day silent retreat. I signed up for the 17-day silent retreat, and that was wow. Hello, welcome. So after during the 17-day silent retreat, I felt like I went deeper than I had ever been within myself. And I'm just going, okay, everyone's muted. And so I decided that one day I would do the 49-day silent retreat one day. And it was almost like it was decided for me. Like I didn't choose it, but the decision had been made. And I thought, well, why postpone it? I'm just going to sign up for it. And so I did. And so I signed up for the 49 days and I was so excited. And I would sit here in this room thinking, oh, this 49-day silence. So I would sit in meditation for an hour, excited about the 49-day silent retreat. And I would be like, no, it's going to happen. Just focus. That's happening then. This is now. And I was really excited because one of my dear sisters who had done the 17-day silent retreat was also signed up for the 49 days. And we'd been speaking. And 2 days before the retreat, she told me she wouldn't be participating. So that was a little bit unsettling because it felt like I had, you know, someone I knew that I was going with, and she felt like she didn't feel like it was the time for her. So she gave her space away. And things like that, you know, it's so important to be really grounded, because all of a sudden it can be like, well, why is she not doing it? But I've had very clear since the start. I know all of you personally, which is beautiful, that my life's aspiration is really to bring love and light into the world. So from the beginning, it was something that was not for me. And I don't think you can do something like this for yourself. I would have quit probably on day 3. So, but it was really this, in Sanskrit, we refer to it as icha. It's like this deep intention, which was for the benefit of all beings. May this echo into my life and the lives of others. And so even though my friend decided not to do it, I was, very clear that I would continue, but it was a little 2 days before, called my parents, called my boyfriend to say my farewells. And it felt a little bit like preparing for death. I know it sounds extreme because it's 2 months, but I was like, I don't want to leave any loose ties. So I was like replying to emails and replying to WhatsApp messages. And I was like, I need to leave everything. And they tell you in the preparation that the best way to go into this is to have no loose ends or any, if you need to apologize to someone, do it before the retreat, because everything intensifies. And I'm going to tell you how it intensifies. But any small thing can become like a really big thing because there's nothing else to occupy your mind on. So they say, if there's anything you need to resolve it before the retreat. So I felt like I was going in it really high spirits, very clear-minded, open-hearted, very grateful. So really good conditions, And I really didn't feel fear when people asked me, because a few people asked me, are you nervous or scared? And I checked in with myself, even alone, just asking myself, is there fear? And although I had a dream, I shared this in the blog article I wrote, that I had a dream a few nights before that someone asked me if I was scared, and I answered yes. So that was in a dream. So my subconscious was probably like, you should be scared. But I was like, no, I'm not scared. I have a good relationship with myself. I've been working on it. I remember when I was at university, if my housemates weren't at home, I would message them all like, when are you coming home? Because I didn't like being alone. But it has been many years since that. And so now before the retreat, I felt like, no, I'm actually really looking forward to being alone. Because just to put the retreat in chronological order, it's 10 days with a group in Mexico and Mazunte, with the teacher who gives daily lectures. The meditations are, a little bit guided. And then 10 days with the group. And then we get driven into the mountains, and that's 39 days in solitude. So you're given a little home, and every day someone brings you wood and 2 meals a day and water. And this is where you're completely alone. And then 10 days, which was optional, which I didn't think I would do, but I decided to do 10 more days back with a group in Mazunte, with the teachings and guidance. And so I was really excited for the solitude. And prior to the retreat, they recommend that you meditate 2 hours a day. So I was doing for 6 months, 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour in the evening. And I felt like my meditations were getting deeper. So I felt really great about it, actually. So the 10 first days with my teacher were magical. I felt like I was taking in his words, and he's a true bodhisattva. So a bodhisattva is someone who commits to dedicate their life to humanity. He's the purest embodiment of love. I think we all are. And he did solitary retreats for 10 consecutive years. So of course that it does something to the soul, right? It's beyond the mind. Something really deep happens to the soul in solitude. And so the 10 days were great, as we got in the van all in silence to go to our home for the next 39 days. I was so excited. And when I was taken to my little home, my cabin was one of the smallest ones. And I had prayed for simplicity. And I got this little cabin that was really small, with a shower that you had to heat with wood, which was perfect. No electricity, compost toilet. So I went in there and I was like, oh, I love it. It's perfect. The first 3 days really felt like, I remember like the first tray of food arriving, the dinner, and I actually just burst into laughter because I was like, I cannot believe my luck. I cannot believe this exists, an experience where you can dedicate your all day to your spiritual practice, and that you're cared for in this way, to be provided 2 meals a day. it's a dream. So I actually laughed. I was like, this is too good to be true. And I get to be part of this. This is crazy. And thank you. Thank you. And then day 3 came, which was day 13, of course, in total, but day 3 of solitude. And it was like this dark cloud just like came over me and was like 37 days left. And all of a sudden it was like it dawned on me. Like I was like 37 days left. Okay. And I'm really grateful for how the difficult times were still, I can still see the beauty in the challenge. You know, I never felt like I couldn't. I definitely prayed to God, and I more than, if the word God doesn't resonate with you, please insert the word that you feel, you know, the great mystery of life or universe. But for the first time since my childhood, I found myself really praying with the heart. And so on that day, it was like all of a sudden I realized that I was completely alone and that I wouldn't be able to connect with the people I loved for over a month, you know, a month and a week. And it was a little overwhelming. So I was there and just me. And the days felt eternal because the schedule was 2-hour meditation in the morning, which was generally pretty easeful. You know, I've been meditating for almost a decade. So I was like, I've got this, you know, 2 hours in the morning, no problem. 2 hours of hatha yoga, blissful, wonderful. Then breakfast would come. And then between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m., it was free time. And when I heard of, you know, the schedule, I was like, I love free time. Yes, because I can play my guitar, I can make beads, you know, I can make jewelry, I can do things. But stripped of all things to do, it's just being. And I realized that I wasn't very good at being. As much as I thought I would love it, I felt quite restless. And I realized that for 36 years, I've just been, well, maybe not my first few years of life. Kids are really good at being. But for most of my life, I had been doing, you know, doing yoga or doing, and being was almost foreign to me. And so when you have 4 hours and nothing to do, it gets a little just, I can't say I was bored, but I was more like, okay, so here we are, and here I am, and just all these thoughts. And that came in waves, but there were also so many moments in that being when I would surrender to the fact that there was nothing to do. I discovered that by looking at the clouds, my mind could be still. Hi. And so it was really a gift to be able to look at the sky from my little cabin. And so I would look at the clouds for sometimes an hour, sometimes longer. And that's when the mind would become stiller. And I found myself just smiling, you know, like all teeth, just at the clouds, just feeling so much joy attached to nothing, which was a new experience in a way. Because if you'd asked me before the retreat if I was happy, I would have said yes. And most of the time, I feel really happy, but I'm happy because I'm with my boyfriend, or I'm happy because I'm teaching yoga, or I'm happy because, so a happiness attached to chocolate or something. But in this experience, it was happiness out of being. And that was such a precious revelation because I wrote a few letters to my boyfriend. And in one of them, I said, it's such a beautiful surprise to see that I'm actually just happy about nothing, like happy to be. And I keep this teaching so preciously because often the impulse of getting something, thinking that it will bring happiness, still comes up, you know, like, oh, I'll get a tea or I'll get a this. And actually remembering that happiness, this is not about me, by the way, this is our true nature, not just us in this call, but the scriptures tell us that God essence, which is the essence of all existence, so not something outside, but our very essence, is Sat Chit Ananda, which means existence, consciousness, bliss. So it's not something, that I am lucky to have. It's actually bliss is our true nature. But when the mind gets in the way, what the mind creates is separation. And in separation, there is no possibility to perceive this bliss that we are. So it was beautiful, to be studying these teachings for over a decade now and to experience this bliss. And two people from the 49 days said very simple but beautiful things to me at the end. One said to me, every time I loved going past your cabin, because sometimes people would pass by, not a lot, but if you wanted to go one way, you had to, so they would come in front. And although we're not supposed to look at each other's faces, you can kind of perceive, the person's facial expression. And one of the guys said to me, you had a resting bliss face. Of course, he wasn't always there, but this is our natural state, right? And another one, she said to me at the end, whenever I saw you, I thought, well, she's having a good time. She obviously wasn't there when I wasn't having a good time, but it was a good reflection, of the good times. So that's when it was great. And something I hadn't foreseen, actually, because they said, we recommend 8 hours of meditation as something that you reach gradually. But actually meditating on your own, on hour 4 or hour 5, so it's not continuous. So I started with the schedule, then 3 to 6 p.m. is a 3-hour meditation block. Then you have dinner. And then again, 7:30 to 9:30 p.m., 2-hour meditation. And at the beginning, just the 8 hours seemed like I would never reach it. And I wrote in my journal, I don't know if I will reach the 8-hour meditation recommendation, because it just seems like I cannot imagine, in the evening, I would do 1 hour, and that hour felt like so difficult at times because I felt tired, and I'd been like, I've done 6 hours already. And there's another 2. I had this feeling like when you feel like you can't do something, like that feeling. And so I'd be like, it's okay. Like, we did 7 hours, that was great, and I'm going to bed. And one day it happened. But during those hours of meditation, I know all of you have meditated, but things come up, right? Memories, worries, doubts, fears. And actually, I'll read to you one of the quotes that my teacher sent us to put things into perspective. So this is a quote by Henry Nouwen. Solitude is the garden for our hearts, which yearn for love. It is the home for our restless bodies and anxious minds. Solitude, whether it is connected with a physical space or not, is essential for our spiritual lives. It is not an easy place to be, since we are so insecure and fearful that we are easily distracted by whatever promises immediate satisfaction. Solitude is not immediately satisfying because in solitude we meet our demons, our addictions, our feelings of lust and anger, and our immense need for recognition and approval. But if we do not run away, we will meet there also the one who says, "Do not be afraid. I am with you, and I will guide you through the valley of darkness." So in reality, we're never alone. In solitude or not in solitude, we're never alone, because there is this primordial essence. And some call it the father, some call it the mother. This energy that is always with us. But when we forget it, this is when, when I read this text that says this is where we meet our lust and our anger, I wasn't so scared of meeting lust and anger. And when I read, when we meet our demons, I was like, well, I don't think I have too many demons or none, actually. And something that really came up for me was guilt. And now that I can see the things that I felt guilty for, I'll share some of them with you because I'm here for it. I can see, that I'm really not a bad person. And at the time, they seemed like quite big things. And one of them was before the retreat, it was like a sunset. I was sitting, sending an email, and my boyfriend said, "The clouds look beautiful from here." And I said, "Oh, yeah." And he said, "But you won't see them from where you are." I only needed to get up and, put my laptop down. And before the retreat, I felt, as I mentioned, like a little bit of this pressure of like, I need to get everything done and sent. And so I didn't get up to look at the sunset. I just said, okay, well, I'm in the middle of sending an email. So, that's that. And that memory was so heavy on my mind and my heart. Like it would come up because, of course, I couldn't tell my boyfriend that I loved him or, that I was sorry. And it would just come back and come back as this like memory of where I had not been available to him and I had not been available to the beauty. What can be more important than looking at a sunset with the person you love? And that memory would like repeat and repeat. And I would remind myself, like, I'd be like, it's okay, you'll see him again. And then, of course, the fear that I wouldn't see him again. And that fear would grip me. It was like this like visceral fear and believing that, the risk of someone passing away because you're in silence, in solitude, is not rational at all. There's no reason why it would increase the risk. But for some reason, when that fear would come, it was like I didn't know what to do with it. Like I didn't know where to find comfort. And at first I would go and walk in the forest. Like I would walk and walk because the place is so beautiful. And my cabin was at the very entrance of the forest. So I would go barefoot, with just some clothes and just go into the forest and I would walk and I hugged trees multiple times and I felt like there I could find some comfort. And often I would be like, oh yes, Sat Chitananda, yes, my true nature is bliss and all is well. And sometimes I would feel so joyful and come back to my cabin and sit down and another memory. And so things that, like memories from a partner from like 4 years, actually, no, 8 years ago, someone I loved very much. And again, I didn't cheat or lie. It was like I had chosen to go on holiday with my girlfriends instead of going with him. And that memory would be like you weren't available for love. And so the guilt, and I could give you a whole list, but it would get boring, of these kinds of memories that are not, it's not major. It really is something that when I told my boyfriend about the memory about the sunset, he was like, it's so minor. And I'm like, I know, but I spent hours just like worrying that you would break up with me because I'm not available. Or like my worry was more that he would say, you're always gone because I go to Europe and I go on teacher trainings. And this time I went for 2 months and deep inside me, I knew it was something I would do again. So I was thinking, if I had to pick between my spiritual path, which feels like it is for the benefit of all, or my personal life, then it feels like such a difficult thing to choose. And I realize now I don't need to choose because he understands. But at the time, I felt like torn at times. And so the furnace of transformation, as one of the quotes calls it, was definitely happening. I was, there feeling like, oh, I don't know what to do. And then going to sleep, I would wake up in the morning and again, joy. This, like, I would laugh at the taste of the pineapple. Like eating pineapple, I'd just be like giggling because I was like, what a generous God universe that created this taste that is like sweet and sour and look at it, it's yellow. So it's like this innocence of childhood that we all have within us, right? It never leaves us. But when the mind comes in and we think about bills and serious things, then we forget that this magic is always here. And to meet you. So this magic is always with us. And so as the text says, you know, solitude is not gratifying at first, but with time, you really get to be with yourself, with your true self. So who you truly are. And in that, of course, all the memories come, and they refer to this as purification. I didn't know at the time, but after the retreat, many people were like, oh, yes, the purification. And I was like, that's what it was. Purification. God, it's painful. But, you know, the purification happens. And of course, if you think of a dirty cloth, you know, the purification is like, you know, going at it in hot water, and you might have to like really scrub it. And then it's all white, or whatever color it was. And so that's what happens, because then once the memories and the guilt, there is so much space. And I feel like it was the first time in my life that I perceived the sacredness of everything everywhere continuously. So the sound, you know, I felt like I was giving things up for the retreat, like I was giving up music, and I was giving up my, you know, not my boyfriend, not giving him up, but giving up communication with the people I love, and the sound of the wind in the pine trees. It's music. And I'd definitely heard it before in my life, but it felt like I had put 3D glasses on, and like some things in my ears, and all the sounds and the tastes and everything I could see had become so magical. And it was always magical. It always is. But with time passing and life happening, sometimes the magic in my daily life, I feel like I definitely perceive the magic in specific moments, you know, in a sunset, or like I still very much felt connected to magic. And I would say it. But during the retreat, I felt like then life, existence, like every morning I'd be like, I'm alive. And you know, that is always there. So that's been one of the biggest gifts, and I still feel it with me, so present. And the reason I want to share is because, again, you know, I repeat this intentionally, but this is not about me. This is something that all of humanity, all of existence deserves to experience. So knowing that it is available to us, and if right now, you know, you feel like, oh, that feels so distant, please don't worry, because it is there for all of us, you know. And at the end, I'll be sharing a little bit of how I wish to encourage you to take some time to experience this for yourself. I don't think it's limited to a 59-day retreat, you know. It's actually a lot closer than we think. And one of the stories that I've shared with a couple of friends and with my boyfriend, is that something I wrote in one of the letters to my boyfriend was that as I walked, well, in the evening, I would hear the owls. And as I walked in the forest, I would often think, oh, I would love to find an owl feather. I would love to find a feather. But then after a while, I realized, I thought, why are you asking for more? You already look at this universe is so incredible. We live on a planet where the gravity is perfect, so we can stand, and where things grow out of the soil and we can eat it. You know, we feed ourselves with what grows, and the rain waters us. It's so incredible. Why are you asking for more? But still, every time I would go for a walk, I'd just like look around just in case there was an owl feather on the ground. So I would kind of like be like, stop looking, but I would still just look around. And one day I thought maybe I'll find it on the last day, you know, who knows? So I wrote that. And of course, yes, love, thank you for coming. So happy to see you both. And so I would walk in the forest, kind of looking, but also feeling grateful for everything that was already there. And in the letter to my boyfriend, I said, I hope I'll find a feather. And on the last day, so this is day 39 of, so day 20, no, day 39 of solitude. So day 49 of the retreat. And I went for a walk. And at this point, everything felt, I was so happy, so grateful, like nothing could top it up, be up, you know, it was just like, so this, what a magical experience. And I felt called to go into the forest to say goodbye to this old ancient tree that I'd been to a few times. And so I walked, and as I walked, I found a little hummingbird feather. And I picked it up and I was like, oh, a little hummingbird feather. And I was like, well, I guess this is my feather. I was a little bit like, this is not what I had in mind, but I'm still grateful. Like, it's still cute, but I was kind of like, okay. And so I kept the little feather, and as I was walking, and I went around to the old tree, and the bench I used to sit on had fallen. I wanted to fix it, but I realized it was like a big job. So I was like, okay, I'll sit on the little tree trunk that's behind. And I went and sat on the little tree trunk, and I was looking the old tree and saying thank you, of course, silently. And all of a sudden, I just felt called to look to my left. And I looked to my left, and there, as if someone had just put it down, placed it perfectly, this beautiful white owl feather was there. Just as if it had been, I didn't even have to extend my arm. I just had to look down, and I picked it up. It's in my boyfriend's room because I've gifted it, well, his tattoo space, but I've gifted it to him. I knew it was for him the moment I found it. I didn't really want to give it, but I was like, no, it is for him because it's as it is. But initially I was like, and I just started crying and crying because it felt like this wink from God, from life, from the universe of saying, ask and you shall receive. Be patient. Don't look. Everything you need will be provided. And so I just cried by this tree and holding this white feather. I was like, this magical life, this magical existence. And how often we miss these gifts from the universe because we're in a story. And let me tell you, I had many, many stories. And one of them, one of these stories was that I wasn't worthy of being on that retreat because I was counting the days. Because they gave us a calendar, and our teacher recommended us that every meditation we should write a few notes about the meditation, just so that we can have an idea of our progress at the end of the week, read back. So I did that. But since we had a calendar, I would put a little heart at the bottom of the day, at the end of the day, and then I would count how many days, you know? So I'd be like, okay, 34 days left. So obviously the next day is 33, but still in the evening, I'd be like 33 days left. And I felt a little bit like, this is such a precious gift, such an opportunity. And I'm counting the days down. Of course, this was just a story, like many other stories. There was another story, actually. Oh, it's over there. It's okay. Well, my boyfriend made me, again, I'm sharing this not for the story itself, but hopefully next time you are in a story that you might remember this story and wonder if it might just be a story. So before going, my boyfriend made me a little teapot, like a tiny teapot with a tiny cup, because he works with clay. And so I took it with me. He made me a little box to take it. I'm going to get it. I feel like it's important. So this is the tiny teapot. And it came in this little box that he made. And so when I got there, I took out the tiny teapot and the tiny cup and put it on my altar. And at some point during the retreat, I was looking at it and it started to break. I hadn't dropped it or anything. It just started to break. And I created a story that it was dissolving because our love, or his love for me, was breaking, kind of. And so, yes, oh no, thank you, Melissa. It was really, oh no, because I was like, I'm here and I didn't go and see the sunset with him that time when he asked me, and the teapot is breaking and our love is ending. And, like it was like not good in my head. And when I came out, he was so like, we're good. We're so good. We're so happy to be reunited. It was a story, but I believed the story. And so I suffered, for many times when this thought would come up of the teapot breaking and that symbolizing our love. It was like, but I love him. I don't want our love to end, but it was never true. It wasn't happening. It was only happening in my mind. And there was another story related to that. One of the participants on the 10-day silent retreat gave me a little note. I don't know who it was, but on the last day, she left the note. I don't know where that is. It's somewhere in this room, but where she said something like, thank you for being an inspiration and blessings on your 49-day silent retreat. And so I didn't know who this person, but I put the note on my altar. And whenever I felt like a bit disoriented, I would look at the note and think, well, if I could inspire someone, surely I can inspire myself. But then I thought, oh, I don't have a note from my love. And I remembered that one day, I don't remember how long ago, I noticed that he never used punctuation. So on Facebook, he offers, he says that he's doing tattoos, but he doesn't use capital letters or doesn't use punctuation. And I said to him, why don't you use punctuation? And he said, oh, I didn't learn at school. So I don't use punctuation. I don't know how to. And I had been like, oh, okay. Like I can show you if you want one day. So I wasn't mean, it wasn't a terrible thing, but at the retreat, I was like, he didn't write me a note because I criticized the fact that he doesn't use punctuation. And if I hadn't done that, then I would have a note from him, and I don't have a note. You get it. So, like I said, the little things in solitude, it's like magnified. And so when I came back, I said to him, the little teapot started to break and I thought you were not loving me. And he was like, no, silly, it's because it didn't cook, like this bit didn't cook properly. And I said, and I also had a story that you hadn't written me a note because I told you, that you don't use punctuation. And he said, you didn't look at the bottom of the box? I had written you a little note that he burned with, I know. So there was a little note. All along, there was a little note. Oh, I could cry again. But I was sad because there was no note and there was a little note. And the punctuation thing was not even a thing. I don't think he even remembered. And it caused me so much grief at times. I can laugh about it now, and I'm so glad we can laugh together because I think it's better, But hopefully next time you're stuck in a story where you're the bad person and whatever you've told yourself, remember that the mind is a trickster. Don't believe your mind. And I say this to people all the time, don't believe all your thoughts. So I'd be like, not true, not true. No, ooh, this one's got to be true. And when I believed it, I'd be like gone and run with it, like for some thoughts, it was like the fact of don't believe all your thoughts didn't count. So these are just some anecdotes of the things that caused me suffering. And the thing about not being worthy of being there, I was like, if I'm struggling 2 hours, if I'm struggling to meditate 2 hours, then, this kind of experience requires more spiritual maturity than what I have. And then when all the participants shared, and they said that, one of them shared that he cried most days, and some participants shared that they really had a tough time. And I was like, oh, so we all had a tough time at times. I was like, okay, so it wasn't a me thing. It was just like a solitude thing, that it's really tough. Okay, well then, good news. And then at the end of the 49 days, when we came back and we were told, if you would like to do another 10 days, you can. I felt like there is nothing I'd rather do but meditate. After that doubt, I did reach the 8 hours a day at some point, although it doesn't matter. But just to share again, when I had said, I don't know if I'll reach 8 hours a day, and it happened without force, it happened. And after the purification and the painful memories and the regret and the guilt, my heart imploded, and I felt like I loved every leaf of every tree and every rock on the little path of my tiny little cabin. And I cried when I heard a chainsaw, because I knew that they were cutting trees for us to have wood. So my empathy expanded to new levels. And that's such a precious gift, because I can see how empathy and compassion is really the only way humanity can come out of our current situation, because there is a lot of suffering on planet Earth at this moment. So this personal effort, this work, goes far beyond ourselves. So when we were asked if we wanted to stay, I said absolutely yes. I'll do another 49 days, another 10 days, although I felt like I could continue. So I did 59 days. And at the end, many people, I say this purely because I know that what they were complimenting was not me, but many people said to me, you're radiating, your radiance, or hello, friend, and saying things like, we can see the silence in you, or I didn't know I could, perceive so much light and presence. And it was beautiful, because I understood that what they were saying was actually that there was less me than ever. So they were not talking about Melissa. They were talking about the lack of. Don't get me wrong, I love that part of me, but I can also see that whoever has caused suffering in the past is that part of me, is the ego, is always the ego. And we must have compassion for the ego, and also recognize that it's not separate to us. It's like our shadow. But to understand that the spiritual journey is actually that journey of the lessening of that, of the me, mine, for me. The ego is always looking out for itself. And the more we can give from the heart, the more we can be of service, the more we receive, the more love, the more joy we experience. So it was beautiful to have people come to me and tell me beautiful things and feel like they were going through me, because I was like, oh, they're talking about the silence. They're talking about God. They're talking about solitude. And so to have that be said to me, and to feel like it was like, I was like, thank you. But even saying thank you felt like I was just like, thank you on behalf of God, which is all of us. So of course, it's not something personal. It's something that is alive within us all. And silence and solitude really help us reveal that, really helps to bring it forth. So just I'll share a last little bit of the integration process. So much more could be said, but on my journey back, I had to take a 12-hour bus overnight and then a 12-hour shuttle. But actually first I had to take a bus to the 12-hour night bus. And when I got to the station, there were many people from Haiti. And I don't know if you know what is happening in Haiti, but people are having to leave their lives, their homes, their land, because the situation is so terrible. And so I had a couple of hours waiting there. And a man came over to me and he asked me, what do you think of Black people? So people from Haiti are mostly dark-skinned. And I said, well, actually, my mom is half African. And he said, no, but I'm asking you, what do you think of Black people? And I said, we're all the same. We're all born, we all die, we all suffer, we all love. And And so I think in that moment when I said that, he perceived that I was speaking the truth, that I really felt this way. And of course, he was asking me because he's been mistreated so much on his journey from Haiti to Mexico. And so we started connecting, and he started telling me of all the things that he'd been through. And I realized that this time in silence, let's say, I want to say like almost like away from me and with God, which may sound, feels like, yes, like a letting go of the me, and connecting with something much bigger, made me so available to listen to him and to feel his suffering. And I think a past version of me may have wished the bus would have come sooner, or may have wished he would have spoken to someone else, but actually I was so present for everything he had to share, to be with him. And at one point my eyes teared up, and because I felt like it was my brother telling me this story that he's been through, because actually we are all connected, we are all family, this human family. And so as he told me, I really felt with him, and you know, and he said to me, "No, don't cry, sister. Um, you know, justice will be done." And at the end, we hugged. We had like such strong embrace, and I had some nuts, so I gave him the nuts that I had, and it felt like such a soul recognition that we both needed. And so that to me was the reflection of what this time in solitude did to my soul, in a way, that I was so fully available for the suffering in that moment. And I continuously am, because of course there is suffering everywhere. So I'm so grateful beyond words for our teacher, Sahajananda, for creating these experiences, and for all the people who make it possible, you know, the karma yogis, because they're people who are volunteering to make this possible in the center in Mazunte, but also the people who work in Mexico are Mexican people working for a wage, of course, but still it's not an easy work. They cook all the food with wood, so it's not it's an energy consuming work, and I can see how this experience has worked in me and in the other participants. And it gives me so much hope, so much gratitude. Thank you so much for listening to this hour-long account of the ups and downs and all the rest. And what I want to say to you before I open for questions, in case there are any, is that you can create space for silence and solitude in life. Leave your phone aside, go into nature, and spend an hour with yourself. And, you know, the demons that we find there, we might as well make friends with them, you know, like the guilt and the grief that I shared, that I experienced. In the end, I was able to see that they're about the little Melissa that was scared of losing love, you know, and all these parts of us that just need attention and need love. So whatever you find there, it's all okay. And know that your true essence is love. So don't be scared to go into those what seem like darker spaces, because you're never alone. So that's all. Thank you all so much for coming to listen. Are there any questions, anything you'd like to ask?
I just want to say thank you. I can't even talk right now. I'm just feeling everything. Thank you so much.
I'm on my phone, so I don't know if anyone else wants to speak. Can I say something?
Yes, please, Luba.
Thank you. Oh, thank you for being so generous, Melissa, as always. Amazing. So I have two questions. My first one is around the word insecure, and when you said that it is the insecurity we have that makes solitude a difficult journey. And my question is, could it be that it's our social nature? Is there no better connection and manifestation of love than that shared with others? So that's my first question. And it reminds me actually of a movie I watched many years ago, which Into the Wild, where it's based on a true story, and the protagonist at the end, who was stuck and was dying, and in fact died in a storm alone, had engraved saying happiness only exists if it's shared. So I just want to throw this and see what you think about that. And then my second question is more about the chronology. Did you find the challenges coming cyclically along the 49 days, or was your journey from challenges to then that bliss that you talked about that was more sustained? Like, how did that work?
Mm. Yes, thank
Thank
you. And thank you, Lore. Regarding the first question, the idea of solitude is not necessarily that you'll go into solitude and be alone forever, but that you'll come back and be a clearer vessel of love. Because with all our, when it speaks of our insecurities, I realize a lot of my sense of self is based on the validation from others. If you seeing myself in the mirror and recognizing myself as me or what I think myself to be, and then someone calling me by my name and someone asking me advice on something, and that reinforces that sense of self, which is the limited self. So these insecurities, when there's no one to reaffirm who you are, it almost feels like the ground is a little loose, right? Like there's nothing to grasp on. So I can see already how my availability to be of service around me, wherever it's needed, has expanded. And already, as some of you know, I was already dedicating some time to spend with the kids from the community. I saw them yesterday for the first time in almost 3 months, and we were all so happy. But really, the solitude is not necessarily something that you think of as for the rest of your life. But if you look at many mystics from different lineages, it's said that Jesus spent 40 days in the desert. And the fathers of the desert, who were these Christian mystics, would go in the desert and spend time, months at a time. And Buddha enlightened alone under the Bodhi tree. And so this idea of silence and solitude is not something modern at all, but something monks have practiced for eons, actually. So really, it's this purification so that you can come back and be together, really together. Because when you look closely at the ego, it is always looking out for itself. And you might think, well, if it's my children, but they're like an extension of you. And naturally, there is this like protection of me and mine. And this is why we live in the world that we live in at the moment. If we can all live less for me and mine, but for others, imagine this world. This was a vision I had while I was there. A news reporter saying, for the first time in the history of humanity, there are no wars on planet Earth. And people have been helping each other. And, and I get full body shivers because this is a dream. And if we can all dream it together, but not just conceptually, but all every day, give as much as we can, then the world will be such a different place. So I do believe that happiness can be experienced alone. Perhaps bliss can be experienced alone, and then this joy as well, but then happiness is better shared. I agree. And your second question?
The timeline of challenges
Thank you.
versus bliss.
Yes, so it was definitely cyclical. When my menstruation came, it felt like I had like a purification of my past boyfriends. It was very interesting. Like all day meditation was just about, you know, boyfriends where I just hadn't been who I aspired to be. And again, you know, not terrible things. I didn't hit anyone or even say horrible things, you know, it was just more like a feeling of, oh, I didn't do enough or so it was very much cyclical. And I can see how this path requires coming back and coming back to this solitude and this silence. But it's definitely not just like towards the end of the 59 days, I would say the last 10 days, I was consistently blissful and happy. But we were back with Sahajananda, with the teacher, with the group. I had spoken to my boyfriend and I knew he was well. I said to him, you know, I'll be back in 10 days. And he said, go. So I felt like everything was good. But no, it was definitely cyclical. Thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Just a second, I will stop recording so I can upload this to YouTube, as I think that if it's longer than an hour, it's tricky. Thank you to all who have watched.